Good evening. Welcome to Authentic Expressions. My name is Mige Kalim. Glad you're here to join us. So today's topic is screen time smarts, technology without the tantrums. So we are grateful for Laurel Ridge for sponsoring this program. Laurel Ridge is a behavioral health hospital that provides compassionate care for every stage of life. It provides personalized treatment for all populations. Their interest is to help you into your journey of wellness. There are services for children, adolescents, adults, military dependents, active duty service members, veterans, and first responders. They offer a variety of services: inpatient, outpatient, substance abuse, residential treatment. Call 210-491-3591 for no-cost assessment. So, welcome. So, today's topic is screen time smarts, technology without tantrums. So, I see lots of familiar names and faces. So glad you're here. So, Brittany Jones, welcome. Leah, Victoria, and Kristen. Good to see you all. Welcome again. So, tell me your questions. What are some questions that you have that is related to screen time? So, Brittany has a question. What role does boredom play in screen time overuse? And how do we help our teens build a tolerance for it instead of escaping it? Build a tolerance for it instead of escaping it. So, besides boredom, so I want you to think about inclusion. What do you want to include into your children's life rather than just put up with something? So, what you want to include activities, you want to include socialization, you want to include time with your teens, time with your children. So don't just ask them to put up with it, but ask them to build upon it so that there is there are other options, so that they're not just sitting there bored and then they rely on what is comfortable. It's like drinking. Yeah, you drink when you're bored, you drink when you're stressed, you drink when you are, under a lot of pressure. But you want to use your drinking differently, not just constantly associated with stress and tension. So think about what you want to include and build into your children's life, into your teens' life, because you as a parent need to model a good variety of experiences, a good variety of activities in your life. Because if you often just do work, go home, veg out, and do social media or do digital time, then your children will do the same thing because the children are a carbon copy of you in a different way. So you might want to add more spice and variety into your own life so you don't just conveniently resort to the device that's in front of you. So, welcome, Monica, Bridget, Rachel. So, Rachel has a question. What strategies would you recommend to parents whose children throw tantrums every time they are restricted from screen time? That is a prize question because many parents deal with it. So, you already know that the child is going to pitch a royal fit, a grand royal fit. So before you even do the next, give them the screen time, before you even give them the device, you would ask them what are the guidelines. You only have how much time? So your job is to not tell them, but to ask them, how much time do you have when I turn this to you? How often do we use it? And when the timer goes off, what do we do? So set a timer. The timer is not just for baking only. So set the timer so that when this ding goes off, what happens? So they have to tell you until they tell you all the guidelines that you have listed, do not give it to them, because you are only setting yourself up to train them to have temper tantrums. So you have seen it repeatedly. So do not set it up so that you give them the device and then they pitch a royal fit. And then you have to tell them that I know you're in the middle of something exciting and juicy, but what is the guideline? What are the guidelines? So they have to tell you. And then you can say, I'm going to give you a 5-minute warning. And if this first bell goes off, that means you have 5 more minutes. So you have them agree with you before you turn anything to them. So you often want to set yourself up for success, but do not tolerate repeated behavior. Because if you train your children to throw temper tantrums when they're 5 years old, when they're 10 years old, they can stomp away and throw a royal fit. When they're 15 years old, the tantrum goes according, in magnitude. So you have to think about how you want to curb it early on in life. So Leah has a question. What does healthy screen use looks like at different developmental stages? Early childhood versus adolescence. That's a great question. So anything under 2 years old, videos should only be used for chatting with families across the country, families that are in different parts, of different parts of town. So anything before 2 years old should only be used for video chatting. But parents conveniently use video screen time to use as a babysitting device so that they can go do other things. So anything before 24 months should be only used for video chatting. From 2 years to 5 years, less than 1 hour a day, only on education materials, less than 1 hour a day. 6 years or older, you need to negotiate what is fair. What are their friends' parents doing? So what is fair? So my concern and my interest is more about when you finish your homework, when you do your chores, and then we negotiate a time, a consistent time, so that it's more routine and it's not just random. All these devices needs to be locked up when they are not in use. Because if you allow them to be sitting everywhere, then they will be using it everywhere, anytime, all the time. So you want to set up guidelines that is going to be healthy and functional for you so that you're not constantly monitoring, policing, complaining about what they are. There you go again. Here we are. So you need to set yourself up for success. All right. So Bridget goes, how do you help families set realistic screen time limits without constant power struggle? Yes, that is a common problem because parents basically allow the children to dictate how they work rather than saying, I'm the parent, I need to set some guidelines. And then you and the child walk through those guidelines. You can negotiate, you can discuss it, but then, you have the final say and you draw up some simple guidelines. If you have too many, that's, setting the family up to fail. So the guidelines should be very simple. When you wake up, your responsibility is to take care of school-related stuff, get ready for school. And then your homework, your chores, family time, physical activities, alone time, all this should come before screen time. And parents fail to negotiate that. They go, okay, once you do your homework, you have free access to it. So that's constantly setting yourself up. So when you Address these guidelines, visit it regularly. When the person who breaks it, you go back to the drawing board and say, okay, what are the guidelines? So when you ask the child, the teen to tell you, rather than you nag and whine and complain about it, you should have them tell you and go, tell me how we're going to abide by this and tell me what needs to happen when we slip. So you want to have conversation and not just focus on yelling, screaming, complaining. So always be ahead of the game. Discuss things before it gets to be a big problem. Many parents focus on the bickering, the daily bickering, which is time wasting, exhausting, and draining. So get yourself in front of the cart rather than behind the cart and struggle with your teen. Because when you struggle with your child or your teen, then you become their age. So as a parent, you want to set the tone that says that you are in charge, that says that you and the teen, you and the child, while you negotiate, but everybody should be working with those guidelines because you're helping them set guidelines. You're helping them negotiate early in life so that you don't come across as a dictator, but you do have a final say. Like, it's only limited to 1 hour, so you get to pick. After all this, you get to pick. Physical activities have to be in there somewhere. And it could be physical activity of playing in the backyard, going for a family walk, doing something physical. These days, parents think, okay, once you relax and chill, it's digital time. No, we forgot the fact that physical activities is part and parcel of your, living in this household. And people forgot the principle or they ditch it. All right, Bridget has another one. How do you break old habits? Example, unlimited screen time was once allowed, but now the parent caregiver wants to set limits. All right, it goes with question 1. Yes, even though you've slipped and fall on your head and made a big mistake and allow them unlimited access, you can say, I made a mistake. I was human and I wanted to give you free access, but clearly this is not working. So I would like to go back and make some different rules. Depending on the age of your child, I would say, would like to make some different rules. And these are the things I want us to include in our daily routine. Homework, chores, physical activities, meal preparation, doing social activities. Whatever you have, list those things. I want all this, and then also screen time. So you get them to prioritize with you how they want to work it. And then I always ask them for what is fair. But then you go, while you say this many hours, I say that we cut it down to 2. We cut it down to 2.5. And then the weekend you may have this much. So you want the opinion, but you also want to be able to, have the final say in your decision. So as parents, you can apologize and say, I made a mistake and I'm learning and I want to help you be a better, to help you use your time wisely. And so how can we go back to the drawing board and work together? So when you include them in your discussion, cooperation is more likely. All right. All right. What did I do? All right. How the screen? There was a question. All right. Victoria goes, my niece threatens and break things when asked to get off her phone when getting ready for school. How do you help break this habit? I don't know how old your niece is, but to throw things, break things when you ask her to get ready for school. Is I don't know how long this habit has been going on, but it appears that people have been tolerating destructive behavior. Temper tantrum being is one thing, and then to also throw in the uh, the destructive piece of breaking things when she's asked to get off the phone. Seems like the parents have allowed her and encouraged that behavior and not take away her phone. Because when you keep tolerating it and they keep throwing this temper tantrum, so something is being reinforced and being tolerated. And the temper tantrum bit could also be because she has seen this behavior in the adults in her life. When she does not get her way, she pitches royal fits. So, where did she learn this? So, we have to examine who in her life is doing that. All right, Bridget goes, how does screen time affect emotional regulation, attention, social skills at various ages? Great question. It's multi-layered, so I'm trying to figure out how to dissect it. Many times parents have given a lot of power and a lot of parenting principles to social media. They have access, children have access to a lot of things, and they're learning principles, guidelines, values from devices, whatever they are watching. So, my question to you is, as a parent, how are you helping shape your children's values, principles? Because if you have them watch a lot of things, you understand the value that is being taught by these programs. So whatever the value, the children are learning, so how does it impact their development? How does it impact their social skills? How does constant violence impact how they negotiate challenges with their friends? So then when they don't know how to deal with emotions because they have so much access to all these things, then they don't know how to regulate their emotions. So as parents, you want your principles, values, guidelines to be the major influence, not to have somebody else raise your child. So when you commit to bringing a child into the world, you have to also commit to having time to raise them rather than just farm it out to all those programs out there. And you also want to have conversations about when things are bumpy within your child. How do you talk about it? How do you comfort yourself? How do you sit down and calm down and talk things through, talk things out? And then with a lot of these programs, there's a lot of it's rapid pace, rapid fire. So everything is moving regularly. So children don't have the capacity to slow down, to ponder, to think about things. So it is very important that you as parent influence your child's emotional regulation rather than just farm it out to what is convenient and let these programs impact your children's development. Because my guess is a lot of parents have given their time with their children is very limited, but the children's time with all these devices, outweigh the parents' time with the child. If that time ratio is off, then you need to reevaluate how much time you want to spend with your child. You should spend a few minutes in the morning visiting. You should spend a few minutes after school, and you should spend time at bedtime with your child. Not to nag at them, not to fuss at them, not to complain about what they have not done. It's your time to listen to them and to hear what they have to say. Because the earlier you start building these habits, then it takes it into the teenage years. Because when teens turn 13, 14, 15, 16, they go into a cave and they don't want to interact with the adults. So it's very important that you build the foundation of having a relationship with them rather than just do what is convenient to give them full access to devices. All right, Leah goes, how do you balance screen time in a technology driven world? It seems like technology is deeply woven into work, education, relationships. Yes, because adults, we have to hold ourselves responsible, because we also conveniently succumb to technology. We depend on the technology to do our banking, to do our thinking, to do our alarm. So everything is in one little device. So my guess is not many people have alarm clocks anymore because it's all phone based. So when you are so deeply entrenched into, this one device and it runs your life, then you have set yourself up to be more vulnerable. So how do you balance screen time in a technology driven world? So don't just think about taking away screen time. Think about what do you want to include in your life so that there is more balance. How do you want to do relationships? What does your weekend look like? Because when you have time during the weekend, we resort to just sitting there mindlessly doing games or whatever. So that is not healthy either. How are you including physical activities? How are you including family time? How are you including altruistic services, giving back to the community? So it's important for you to think about these ratios and what you want to do. And then the more you include this, then this technology time shrinks. And even as adults, whether you live alone with somebody or whether you're married, you need to think about how much time you want to give yourself to technology related pleasures. I'm not talking work related activities. So that is, what time frame do you want to give yourself to enjoy technology and not let it take over your life? But to get balance, you want to think about what you want to include, what hobbies, what are you doing, what physical things you are going to do, plan to do to have balance. All right, Manuel goes, how do you suggest parents limit screen time after their kids have already become addicted? So this is very similar to what Bridget said. So you can always say, I gave you free access before, but after thinking about it, after reading about it, after studying about it, let's talk about what is fair. So you are human, you make mistakes. So you can always go back and say, I'm sorry, but I would love to see us do things differently. So you ask for their not their guidance, you ask for their input, and then you do what is fair. And you always have the liberty to say, well, you say 5 hours. My preference is that we do 2 hours. So you get to have the final say as a parent. 2 hours after this, and this. After homework is done, after social things are done, after physical activities are taken care of, after we get to spend time together. So these should be technology time should be seen sometimes as treats and not as all consuming. So you can always go back and renegotiate. So it doesn't mean that, once you made a mistake that, all things go on a downward slide. Okay, Marna, let's go. The problem is that parents are doing the same, spending a lot of time on their phones. How can you work with your kids about time they spend on screens when you have the same problem? Yes, 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 of course. Yeah, parents model excessive use of screen time and they use screen time to veg out, to zone out, to decompress. So if you want to model healthy living, it's also so very important to do physical activities. Physical activities like cleaning out the yard, doing something, going out for a walk, going to do hobbies together, going to do something for a neighbor. All these are things that you should discuss and put on the table. That once a week we do some community service. It can be 1.5 hours. So everything should be discussed, balanced out, rather than it consuming you. You ought to have some ratio, some time. If this is 2 hours, we are doing screen time, then we should do 2 hours doing something else. So the goal is to always include things in your life, not just focus on fighting with them about screen time. What are warning signs of unhealthy technology dependency? Great question. Unhealthy technology dependency. When there is limited balance, balance is only about excessive use of screen time. If you can think of an alcoholic addict, that all free time is spent on drinking, drugging. If you find yourself having all those traits, where there's no balance in your life, there's no physical activity, social relationships are limited, and only as a last resort, and you just sit, veg, and decompress with your device, that is very unhealthy because your ability to do social activities, do other hobbies is kind of fallen by the wayside. So Serene goes, PSA for everyone, please learn how to disable AI chat on all devices. It's harmful. I recently had a huge wake-up call with my 8-year-old using this. All right, thank you. All right, so your niece is 11 years old. Yes. So when she throws temper tantrum, pitches a fit, throw things, she probably saw somebody do that and she's emulating that behavior. So it's important to think, step back and think, who is she modeling? What is all these big emotions about? And to be able to talk about it before before the next temper tantrum. So when the phone is taken away, like what's the deal with all this? So you want to have conversation before, when they're calm, and before you even give them the phone. Santos goes, how can you enforce limits without damaging your relationship with your children? Don't worry about damaging your relationships. Your job as a parent is to enforce limits that are fair. I always say, ask the children and then do what is fair. You ask the children for their input, so then they feel like they're part of the family. But you as a parent get to say, while you say this many hours, while you say this, this much, this many ratio, what is fair is this. So don't think about, damaging relationships. Children need your guidance. They need you to show up as a parent. Okay, Crystal goes, if one parent allows unlimited access to media and the other in the same home, and the other is in the same home but wanting to limit time, what's the best way to handle it for a teen? Yes, that is a very sticky situation. Yes. So to How do you get on the same page? I would be more interested in getting on the same page. And then I would not get in a power struggle. I would try to include more interesting activities, talk to their teen, do more things with them outside of the house so that they are not just sitting there at home. And then you should also think about setting, um, you know, technologies free zone in your house. Anytime there's meals where we are eating, all devices need to be put away, tucked away, hidden somewhere. So as parents, you need to use your parental power, your parental guidelines, rather than just think, oh, I don't want to displease my children. Children need you to show up to tell them these are the principles we work with. All right, our time is up, and I am going to read. So Sandra goes, we are reading this book, Parenting Generation Screen by John McCook, and I highly recommended it. It gives practical advice. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I love your questions. I love the active interaction with your question. So next week, the topic is the juggle is real, mastering work family balance. Mastering work family balance. So it's a different version of screen time, but how do we balance things? So maybe a follow up. So please, please, please bring a friend, bring some questions. So look forward to seeing you next week. Again, before we end, thank you, Laurel Ridge, for sponsoring this program. Laurel Ridge provides a variety of services for children, adolescents, adults, military dependents, and veterans. Call 210-491-3591. Laurel Ridge is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Have an awesome rest of your week and bring your questions next week.